and welcome to the Murky Books and Nando's discussion panel, where we are talking about creativity and the journey to success. Let me introduce our panellists. We have Derek Owusu, we have got Hafsa Zayyan, and we have got Damola Timiyin. How are you guys all doing?
Great.
Good, amazing, thank you.
These three are very humble, but they are all authors who are being published under Murky Books. So we are here to discuss your releases with Murky Books. Can I just give all of you a round of applause, because I've read both of your books. Of course, I haven't read yours yet, Hafsa, but I'm looking forward to it. And you're all Murky Books authors as well. Can we start with you, Derek? And can you just tell us where your journey began? We know that you found your passion for literature when you were at uni, but where did you actually start working on it?
I started working on the book about 2.5 years ago. I was, can I put this? I was in kind of like a mental health facility, and I started writing the book to, I guess, understand the journey that someone goes through in order to get to that place. That's literally how it started. I didn't write it to get published. I was just writing it for myself. I was enjoying myself. I was using it to pass the time because it was very boring where I was. And eventually I found myself in the office of one of the editors at Murky Books, and we were just talking. I think we were talking about, I think we were talking about rap or something like that. And I was just telling him about my poetry. And then we got to talking, he came up with an idea for a book. And then I met with Stormzy's manager, Akuya, spoke about the book that the editor had proposed, and then I sent her some of my poetry so that she could get kind of a feel of my writing style. And she said, I want to publish this as well. We negotiated, and they offered me a 2-book deal, and that's how it happened. I mean, I got very lucky to have that happen to me, because I know how hard it is to get published at a moment, any time. So yeah, very grateful that that happened to me.
I think sometimes things are just meant to be, and you know, serendipity is the word that we will use, especially for someone like you as well, Damola, because your book is quite practical, isn't it? It's a how-to, and it does go hand in hand with what you do for a living. How did your book deal come about?
I mean, I was also lucky. I think it was January of 2020, so the beginning of what has been a very long year. I got a message from my friend and now co-author Niran. We've known each other for 10 years, but he sent me a message saying, have you got time for a chat? And I was like, yeah, sure, what is it about? Oh, it's about Murky. I'm like, okay, cool. Pick up the phone, we had the conversation. In that phone call, it was, you know, he's been approached by the Murky Book team to write a how-to guide on how to build brands, which is familiar to both of us because we work in the industry, but not necessarily familiar to, you know, the layperson. So he came to me with that opportunity, and I mean, I had to say yes.
So, Derek, your book is, of course, coming from the heart. It's based around real life experiences. And Damola, your book is, you know, it's straight down the line. This is how you get to where you want to be. But Hafsa, you're a lawyer and your book is fiction, right?
Yes.
So how did you kind of come up with that? How do you make the leap from doing something so serious, so factual, to creating a whole new world, so to speak?
I think probably like it started because I love reading. And I read so much as a child growing up. It was my sort of passion. This was pre-mobile phones and pre-mass access to internet. And so you just had the library or friends. I chose the library. And yeah, I was a bit of a loser. But yeah, so I think if you read a lot as a kid, like you have a lot of spare time, you end up doing like quite a bit of writing, copying your authors' like favorite styles and things like that. I think then I went to university and all of the kind of reading for pleasure died off, especially because I studied law. So I ended up doing dispute resolution. So what I do is I go to court or a, tribunal, and I basically argue a case. So you're kind of writing a story in a way. But yeah, so the leap to sort of fiction was kind of something that was already always there. And I guess there were a few skills maybe that I picked up from like the legal sort of side of things and applied to the book. I hope it doesn't read like a law textbook, but we'll have to see what people think.
If you had to summarize your journey from the beginning till now, Hafsa, how would you do that? Because you're the only person here who hasn't been published yet. So you're still kind of in that
Nascent.
bubble.
My journey is only beginning. Well, what's really, really cool is that, so I and again, like in terms of entry into the industry, slightly differently to Derek and Damola, I entered the PERi New Writers Prize, and anyone can do that. You don't have to be contacted by PERi. You just write 2,500 words and enter it. So it's like a huge access thing, which is great. It doesn't matter sort of where you're from as long as you have a story. And so that's how it started for me way back in like 2019. In fact, was it 2018? I don't know.
2020's been a decade, so yeah.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, my book was initially supposed to be published in July, but because of COVID, it's now been delayed into January. But what I was trying to say, which has been really cool, is that even though the book's been delayed in terms of being published, I've had a lot of opportunities come to me because of people know that now that I'm affiliated with PERi and that I'm a writer. So I've written a piece for Elle, I've written something for another magazine, which will be coming out before the book's published. So there are these tiny little pieces of sort of quasi-journalism or little bits of fiction that I can still put out there before the book is published. And so that's kind of where my journey is right now. But obviously the kind of climax of it is going to be the publication of the book. And that's obviously coming and quite terrifying and exciting at the same time.
No, but it's good that you have these little highlights in the lead up to.
Yeah.
Derek, what's been your career highlight so far?
You know what? I think it was seeing my book on Amazon before it even came out, before it had a cover or anything like that.
I pre-ordered it, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I think that before that, I knew I had this book coming out, but it didn't hit home until I saw it on Amazon, and I was like, wow, like, am I allowed to swear?
Goddamn.
Yes, okay. I was like, wow, shit, like my book is actually real, it's coming out. So that was a highlight. And of course, you know, winning the Desmond Elliott Prize was a huge highlight, although I wasn't able to.
Amazing.
I wasn't able to, like, I guess, celebrate in the way I would have liked to, but yeah, it was a huge honor, huge surprise. I never expected anything. I never expected to win anything or anything like that. You know, I was just happy that the book was out there and people were reading it and enjoying it.
Would you say that you've always planned on being a creative, of being somebody who writes?
Yeah, I've always written in different forms from quite young. I remember writing my first story when I was about 8, and my teacher threw it out because my handwriting was terrible.
Oh, she's a hater.
I
Look
know,
at you now.
Yeah. I didn't want to write, but then obviously I grew up in the grime era, so I wanted to be a grime artist, so I was writing lyrics, and then I wasn't any good at that either. So that changed into me.
So this is what, like Plan Z?
This is, yeah, I mean, I've always thought to myself, when I really got into literature, I thought to myself, when I'm 50, I'm going to write a novel, like an autobiographical novel, when I'm in my like 50s, because I thought that's when I'll have enough of life experience and I'll have enough to write about. And then obviously it just didn't happen like that, because I know I went through a crisis quite young, you know, in my late 20s, and the book just came out, you know, in that way. And also, just like, obviously, to be clear, like, it's not a memoir. It is a novel. Like, this is, and I always thought there is a fine line between, because I don't think you can ever write a novel or a memoir or autobiography that is 100% factual. There's always going to be elements of fiction in there, whether you like it or not, because you misremember things. That's one of the things that I tried to touch on in the book. So yeah, and I think that now that I have that out of the way as well, I can really focus on being a lot more creative as well, because I always wanted to do that. I've done that now. I'm 20 years early. You know, I beat it by 20 years. So yeah, this is now giving me scope to be even more creative in what I do next.
What about you, Hafsa? Because of course you definitely went down the academic route in terms of your career path. Is being creative, is being a writer something that you planned or have wanted to do?
I think it was always kind of like one of those dreams, like, oh, I want to be a professional footballer, or
but
I want to be a singer.
knee injury.
Yeah, that's the reason why I didn't make the footballing.
It's the ankles.
Or an actor, or you know, all of the, to be honest, for me, like the creative industry as a whole felt very like closed off. Like there were a lot of barriers to entry, and I still feel like that way massively.
In what
now.
way?
I didn't really see a lot of people like me necessarily represented in it. I also, you know, coming from the family that I come from like an immigrant background, pursuing a career in creative, like, you know, some kind of creative pursuit is not really you know,
It's a bit
I'm
tricky.
half Nigerian, half Pakistani. You've got to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or a pharmacist, and that's pretty much the scope of what you can do. So there were a lot of reasons why it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to actively pursue as like my primary career, but it was always a dream. So it's kind of like Murky Books was amazing in the sense that it not only gave me like a random person with no creative writing accreditations whatsoever. Like I didn't have a degree in it. I hadn't written anything that had ever been published before. So it gave a random person like me access. I mean, the only black writer I read growing up was Mallory Blackman. Like I didn't really, as a kid, like I never really read anything else. It was all just like what was in the library where I grew up, and she was the only one. So yeah, those kind of two things probably pushed me away from pursuing that as a creative main career.
And to you, Damola, your book, of course, it is different to these guys because it is something that is non-fiction. How do you, somebody who is teaching us how to be successful, how do you measure success?
I mean, success, it will differ depending on the person. I don't think there's a single kind of measure of success. And often, you know, figuring out whether you've been successful depends on what goal you set yourself at the beginning and whether or not you've reached that goal at the end. And that's all I would say about how you would, you know, measure success, is about setting a goal and finding a way to achieve it. And it's difficult. Getting there is super, super hard. And I can't say that I've met every goal that I've set myself by any means. But I guess the answer to your question is success means different things to different people. Set a goal, try and meet it, and if you don't succeed, then you try again, as many parents will tell their kids.
Was there a moment when you thought, okay, I'm successful, like I've sort of hit this kind of goal?
In the grand scheme of things, I don't look at myself in the mirror in the morning, brush my teeth and go, oh man, I'm successful. Like I've made it at all.
You should say it 5 times.
I mean, I don't feel that way, but I know that there have been moments in my career and life where I could say that was a success. So for example, I remember in 2012, they were looking for people to audition for the Olympic opening ceremony. And I used to dance back in the day. I thought I was an alright dancer.
If it wasn't for social distancing, I'd make you bust a move.
I mean, you know, like thank God for Corona, but I used to dance, I can't dance anymore. And saw that email at the time, thought I'm gonna apply to this. So that would have been a goal. I wanted to get into that, into the opening ceremony, went to the audition. The first one was all right, easy, nice 2-step, everyone, like all of us here can do that. The second audition was a madness. I walk into the room, see people who are clearly professional dancers, limbering up like it was, you know, seen from Fame in their lycra and tights, and I just came in my trackies and I was like, yeah, I can do this. And I started and absolutely flopped it. And then the last bit of the audition, rows of 3, I was in the back, went through the routine, which was mad difficult. And I had one of those brain fart moments where I was like, well, I'm not gonna get into this unless I do something ridiculous. So I tried to do a backflip, landed on my ass, like literally landed on my ass, row of judges, I'm thinking I'll flop this. But 2 weeks later I get an email going, you've made it. And at that moment I was like, shit, I'm successful. I'm gonna be on the stage, performing to like millions of people, landing on my ass, you know. But that was probably the only moment in the last like 10 years where I really went, fuck, I made it. This is great. But apart from that, everyone has little wins and things like that. I don't want to rest on those little wins and laurels. And
I think it's quite smart to set small goals, to achieve them and to build gradually, as opposed to being like, my life has to culminate in this moment. Yeah. Because if you do reach it early, then you got 100 years left and it's like, what are we gonna do? I
mean, Derek, you reached your goal early.
What now?
So what next?
Oh, just plenty more books. Now that I've realized that I can do it. I think I also set that goal 50 years because I felt like I couldn't do it. When I got to 50, I'll probably think, okay, when I get to 70, then I'll do it. I think it's a way of me kind of adding distance to what it is I thought I wanted to achieve. But now that I've done it, you know, I feel like I could do it again.
Derek, let me ask you this. You spoke a little bit about your creative process, about you know, writing your thoughts and feelings down when you weren't necessarily in the best place. Can you give us a little bit more of a look into what your creative process is?
One thing that I always do before I write is I sit down, I drink, and then I try to imagine the feeling that I'm trying to convey on the page. If I can't feel it, I can't write it. No matter what the feeling is, no matter what it is I'm trying to put a character through, I have to really feel it. So, you know, for example, a new poetry collection that I'm writing, it's about a middle-aged Ghanaian immigrant who's just come over to the UK, and she's she's thinking about suffocating her child. Now I have to really try, as impossible as this sounds, I just really have to try and make myself feel like that. And it's emotionally taxing. And after you've done it and you manage to write, you feel awful, you just feel spent and stuff. It's probably a very bad way to write, but I just can't write something unless I feel something. Unless I feel what I'm trying to convey, I can't do that.
I think that's why your work has the impact that it does on people, because, you know, when I read your work, I really am touched. But now I realise it's because it's you. You've given a part of yourself, and if you give a part of yourself when you're writing, of course you're going to be exhausted after. You've got to respawn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, but I love doing it. I love doing it. You know, I kind of see most writers as like method actors. You know, you have to really try and inhabit the character and everything they're trying to do. Otherwise, I just don't feel like you can do it. I don't want to say authentically. I don't think that's the right word, but do it convincingly. Yeah, so that's pretty much my writing process. And also, I can't write at home. I have to be out somewhere. I used to write at South Bank or go to a Costa Coffee or something like that. When I'm at home, it's difficult to write.
Hafsa, do you have any practices that you have, or anything that you go through, any rituals or procedures in order to get you into a creative space?
The thing I always start with, I mean, I say always for the book that I wrote, was the themes of the story. Like, what are the key themes? And there was about 5 or 6, and each of these themes was, I've still got the document, on a Word document, talking about what exactly this book is going to address about this theme, how it's going to approach it, and what do I want the reader ultimately to take away from these specific themes. So that was the first thing I did. Then I basically did a very, very outline plot summary of every chapter in the book. So I wrote 1 to 30, and then I just wrote down what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, and where it was going to happen in each chapter in the book.
I'm asking her about meditation, and she's telling me about plot lines. How do you relax?
I didn't for that period of time of my life. But yeah, so that's my sort of process. And then, you just sit and you write it.
How long did it take you?
About 6 months.
Wow.
That's not long.
No, it wasn't very long.
That's not long at all.
It wasn't.
Damola, where do you feel like you have your best ideas? Don't say on the toilet.
Oh, actually, it's a bathroom setting. Well, the shower, to be honest, I recall specific moments where I'm trying to solve a problem, whether I'm writing the presentation or I'm writing something for people to read, and I'm like, bang, that's the idea, or that's the answer to that question. So certainly in the shower, or often when I'm sleeping, I love sleep, so I do it a lot. But I wake up and I'm like, right, actually, you know what, I think that's the way to go. So I think in moments of calm are where the best ideas for me will come from. Everything's so frenetic and panicked right now that it's hard to get to ideas. Like, you have
through the noise, I guess.
Exactly. So in moments of calm for me are when the best ideas kind of emerge.
What about you, Derek?
For me, usually it's that kind of moment between sleeping and being awake. I don't know, something opens up for me, and I usually just sit there with my laptop when I'm trying to come with ideas, and I'm just kind of like this, and then suddenly the burst of energy, and I just type up the idea, then I just go back to it like this, almost like I'm in this kind of euphoria or something, and then the ideas just flow. Or sometimes if I'm just walking around, I think one of the hazards as well of becoming a writer is that everything in the world becomes material for a new piece of work. So
Getting
anything,
splashed by a car.
yeah, anything that happens, you just think, could I write about that? How would that fit in with this story? I wonder what would be like to
Do you
describe
find that it makes you more voyeuristic, that you're kind of like looking in on people as opposed to actually being in the moment, because you know you've got the proverbial pen always going?
Absolutely. Like for example, if I'm on a date and the person says something really interesting or very nice to me, I'm not thinking, oh, that's really nice. I'm thinking, I need to write that down. That's what goes through my mind. And
Are you single?
Yes, I'm single.
This might be why.
yeah. Exactly. But it's a terrible. It's hard to get out of that, and I think it's worse when you're having this kind of creative moment that often lasts maybe for like 3 months or something, then you fall out of it. But in those creative moments, it's just everything is just it's material for you.
It's funny that you speak about the moment between being asleep and being awake, because I feel like I've written at least like 10 #1 songs in that moment. Obviously, once you're fully conscious, it's almost like it just gets smaller and smaller. What about you, Hafsa? Where do you think that you are the most creative?
Moments of inspiration or creativity strike me when I'm kind of reading other stories. That's why I think reading is such a massive part of writing, and they're so, you know, in a way inseparable. I think the more you read, the better a writer you become. And that doesn't just apply to reading fiction, it applies to reading everything. Read non-fiction, read news, read, you know, articles, read everything. But yeah, for me, it's reading and listening.
You spoke a little bit about the creative industry feeling a bit boxed in and you feeling a little bit cut off. Do you think that it's possible to learn how to be creative?
I personally feel like it's something that I just always wanted to do and I was always kind of born with. But I think there's different forms of creativity. So you can be, for example, you know, amazing at writing fiction, but you might not be so great at a different type of creativity, like acting or whatever. I mean, there's just such a big spectrum of creativity. Everybody probably has some form of that which they are naturally apt at. And I hope mine is writing. We'll see.
No, but you entered a competition blindly, and you know you have something, even if the world hasn't got to view you in all of your glory. There's definitely, you know, something there.
Yeah, hopefully.
At least something, like at least a sprinkle, so. Like just at the very minimum.
Yeah, a sprinkle. But yeah, no, I don't know if I could learn creative things that I'm not so good at. Like I love drawing, for example, as well. I like writing and drawing. And my siblings, so like my sister in particular, she's very good at doing certain types of creative stuff, but she cannot draw. And I just can't imagine trying to teach her how to draw. That being said, Kelvin for art, he's teaching people and he's very, very good.
I kind of see creativity to a certain extent as a muscle that you kind of need to work on. Not to say that anybody can, you know, be the best, but I do think that there might be room for growth. What about you, Damola? Do you think that you can learn to be creative?
I think you can learn to use your creativity better. So there are ways that you can teach people to kind of extract their creativity, whatever that might be. You can also teach people how to express their creativity in a better way, whether that is writing or photography, for example. So in my case, I was a banker before I was working in advertising, but before I was a banker, I was in theatre, and in each of those parts of my life, I was taught how to use my creativity a bit better. So on the stage, I was taught how to express myself in, you know, a slightly better way. And then when I picked up a camera, someone taught me how to express my creativity with a camera in the slightly better way. And I mean, someone could teach me how to sing, but I don't think it would sound very good. I think you can teach people how to express their creativity and hone it down. Yeah, absolutely.
You spoke a bit about, you know, being inspired by the mundane, about being inspired by what's around you. Do you have any one, Derek, that inspires you?
Any one thing?
One thing, one person, one instance. I think, like for me, I'm inspired by times in my life. So of course there are people and there are places and there are things that inspire me, but it's more moments. But is there anything for you that you could kind of put your finger on?
Yeah, authors who I think are particularly gifted. So if I read a particular novel, or a particular author like Jose Saramago comes to mind, when I read his writing, it inspires me because I just think, wow. I think it's amazing that he can do this. I want to be able to do this one day. Though I feel like those are the moments that come to mind that really inspire me. Outside of that, I think I'm inspired by children as well. I think children inspire me. I think watching a child just do anything oblivious to the outside world, they're just having fun or doing whatever. That really inspires me. Like, I spent all of yesterday just watching this little baby chef on Instagram whose mum helps him cook food.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And
he is so cute.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that really inspiring. I just thought, wow, this, he's just living life, and that inspires me to want to live life a lot more as well.
I think it's something in the innocence of it all as well. There's nothing
absolutely.
Contrived about being a kid and trying new things. What about you, Hafsa? What or who inspires you?
Yeah, I mean, other than stories, like we were saying earlier, probably I'm inspired by specific people who have come into my life. And I mean, so for example, my book, my main character, and this kind of touches a little bit on what Derek was saying earlier, how if you're writing memoir, it's not going to be all fact because there are parts of fiction that kind of come into it because you don't remember absolutely everything factually accurately. I think similarly in fiction, it's really hard, I think, as an author when you're writing your characters not to put a little bit of yourself into each of these characters. And because so many of the kind of stories and experiences and things that have happened to me, things that have been said to me, things that I've said to people, experiences around me which have shaped me, feed into each of my characters. So each of my characters reflects a little portion of me or a little experience that happened to me. I think those experiences, those sort of, almost like you said earlier, moments that have happened to me in my life somehow make it into my work.
And what about you, Damola?
I think people doing extraordinary things inspires me, and just seeing that and kind of being witness to it. So there's a friend of mine.
I like your anecdotes.
Oh, thank.
Go on, hit us.
No, a friend of mine, Abe Adeyemi. He is a writer, and he is fantastic. He made a film called No More Wings. It won a Tribeca Short Film Award this year, and his story is inspirational to me. His creativity is incredible, but just how he handles it and everything he's done, it's been inspiring. But what it's done for me is encouraged me to just write more. I've gone, okay, he's told his story in a really interesting way, and I would love to kind of follow suit.
If we flip it on its head, what do you think has been your toughest challenge?
Oh man, my toughest challenge, it's got nothing to do with writing, but it was losing a job, actually. And I say losing a job, the job didn't work out. I thought, I went to join a startup called OSPA, Bank for Kids, amazing idea. And I was there helping a friend to set up the business. But for one reason or another, it didn't quite work out for me in that place. And coming out of that was really challenging because I'd never, in my mind, failed like that before. And that kind of hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting. And to be honest, I didn't really recognize that until a year or two after it happened. I thought, wow, that was an interesting time, difficult experience, but managed to get through it. So that was probably one of the toughest experiences I experienced professionally, and it had an impact on me personally, I think.
Hafsa, you spoke about getting into the creative industry being really tough for you. Would you say that's been the toughest part of this process of becoming a writer?
Yeah, so I think partly it's like a mental block. If you don't see what people who represent you, or you don't kind of see, you imagine that there are these barriers to entry, which I think in and of itself can be quite harmful. But I wouldn't say getting in was that tough for me in the end, because I just entered the competition and bada boom, bada bang, I won. So I wasn't expecting it at all, but it was it was literally like this. So for me, it was like incredibly easy in a way. It's just something that I hadn't pursued in the past because of these various reasons I mentioned earlier. I think in terms of my sort of creative process, the toughest part for me was winning the competition without having a manuscript, a full manuscript, a full novel, because one of the criteria when you entered, you only had to write 2,500 words, that was all fine. And then they shortlisted 20 of us, and you basically, if you were shortlisted, you had 7 days to submit your full manuscript. And it said in the sort of competition criteria, one of the criteria upon which winning entries will be judged is having like the full manuscript ready, because obviously they wanted to publish it quite quickly after, to keep the momentum up after the announcement of the winner. And so I had 7 days and I had 2,500 words, and I just thought, oh my God. And I had to just write as much as obviously I couldn't write the whole book. I just wrote like as much as I possibly could in the time I had available. Went to the camp, met all these amazing people, all super qualified. Loads of them I thought had full manuscripts, loads of them writing for ages. And I just felt so like insecure. And this is why it was such a shock to win. But after I won, it was like all this kind of fanfare and excitement and oh my gosh, like wow, you've won this prize, and all my friends calling me and my family calling me and everyone saying, oh, we're so proud of you. And then I just had this huge stretch of now I have to write the thing. And that was a big challenge because it needed to be done quickly. And I was terrified because I had no idea. I mean, they had no idea where the book was going to go, of course, because they'd only seen like 3 chapters of it. And they had all picked this like, they selected me as the winner based on those 3 chapters. What if I couldn't produce something that was as good as the first 3 chapters? And so it was a huge challenge, not just in terms of time, because there was a time pressure, but also just in terms of like, I was worried that it wouldn't be good enough. And I think it's really hard, like when you're writing fiction, to get away from that because it's so subjective, like how people sort of interpret it and read it. It's not the same as like my legal career where I write a pleading and I think, well, this is accurate and this is good and I know that it's good objectively. It's more subjective than that, and it's kind of like I think Derek, you said earlier, it's kind of you're giving a little part of yourself like away.
I guess you'd be protective of that as well though, because I think that when you're writing, I can only assume, but it's like your baby, and then you have to let it go and be free in the world, and for people to have opinions on what you're doing. So I think that what each of you have done, are doing, are going to do is incredibly brave, because you're putting yourself, even in a professional capacity, out there and saying like, this is what I have to give the world. If we switch it up a little bit, and I want to ask you, Derek, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, is there a piece of advice? Is there anything that you would say to younger D-man?
What would I say to myself? Yeah, I would go back to myself maybe when I was about 12 or 13, and I guess I would just say to myself, you're not strange, you're not weird. There is actually something going on. So try and get somebody to help you. I think that's what I would say. Just to give some sort of clarity to my younger self. And I think it would probably change the trajectory of my life as well. If I had known certain things about my mental health or my personality, if I had known them back then yeah, things would probably be different. I probably wouldn't have written this book, actually, to be fair. But I would sacrifice that in order to be better.
Sacrifice meeting us? No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you think that being the age that you are now, having experienced what you've experienced now and gone through what you've gone through, put yourself out on the page and stuff, do you think that young people put too much pressure on themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think about this all the time. I think that going to university at 18 is so ridiculous. They're expecting somebody to know exactly what they want to do with their life at 18. I think it's madness. So we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and a lot of the time we make the wrong decision. That's why I'm glad that I went to university when I was 24. Because when I was 18, I just said to myself, I cannot do this. I know I'm just going to go, I'm going to rave, I'm not going to get anything done. I'm probably not smart enough at the moment to do it. So yeah, absolutely. My little brother, he's 20 now. He doesn't know what he wants to do, and he's panicking. I tell him all the time, like, just relax, just take your time. Don't force it. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to be 35 and you're going to wake up and think, shit, like, what's going on with my life, and you end up having this midlife crisis and things like that. So yeah, we're definitely too hard on ourselves, and of course it's because you know, kids are brought up like they're on like a production, what are those things called?
Production line.
Yeah, like they're on a
Yeah, like a
production,
conveyor belt,
like
yeah.
a conveyor belt. Yeah, exactly. You know, take this information, okay, get out there, work, help the economy, blah, 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 and all that kind of thing. I think that's just, we're human beings, you know what I mean? We're not machines, we're not products, although we are products at the end of the day. But it's a sad state of affairs, so. Yeah, whenever I talk to young people, I always just say to them, look, you'll figure it out eventually, you know. As you guys said, everybody has a certain element of creativity within them. As you get older, it's almost like it's beaten down.
Beaten out of you
Beaten out of
sometimes.
you as well. It's squashed. I feel like we should be, I guess, helping people draw it out of themselves the older they get, rather than trying to diminish it.
What would you say to your younger self, Hafsa, knowing what you know now?
You know, it's interesting because I feel like my younger self was a lot more confident and self-assured than my older
That's
self.
not surprising though. Because that's what happens when you're in a world where you're kind of taught A, that you know you don't actually exist, and B, that your views, your points and your opinions are not the most important on the table.
That's the thing. I think I'd say to my younger self, don't forget who you are right now and try to hold on to it and don't lose it and let it go.
You need your younger self to come and speak to you.
Exactly. I mean, you're so naive and innocent and you think that life is so, like, I'm talking really younger self. Then you get to the sort of younger self kind of teen years, it's a bit different.
Where everyone's an arsehole.
Yeah. But I don't know, I think young people now, they have so much more pressure in ways that I don't think I necessarily experienced because we didn't really have social media when I was growing up. And I think social media is just a huge, huge cause of pressure that people, you know, we had magazines and we had MSN and we had Playground Talk, and that was the extent of it. You could go home at the end of the day and get away from it all if you chose not to go on MSN. But now it's 24/7, it's constant, and it's just, you know, pervasive. And I do think, you know, even, you know, coming out of sort of university and being a little bit further away from, you know, sort of Gen Z, even then I started to feel some of the pressure of social media, and I wasn't young anymore, or I wasn't, you know, as malleable as I possibly was when I was sort of 15. So yeah, I think that there's quite a lot of harm in social media, and you know, there can be good in it too, obviously, but it's something that I think causes a lot of stress for young people.
But I think that people who are in our generation and older, I think that they see social media as something, or we potentially see social media as something that you have to escape from, that you need to plug out of and you have to get away from. But actually, for people who are teenagers now and younger, that is their reality. That is how they communicate with each other. They know when we're like, there's a real world out there, this is their real world.
Totally.
You know, and it's that, you know, when you become your mum, and you're like, oh, get outside and get some fresh air. And it's like, actually, no, this is what they do now. So that's something to dampen your spirits.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
How do you manage your time, though? Because I feel like there are only 24 hours in a day, and you use a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, turns out you don't really need to sleep that much.
She says.
Yes, eyes twitching. I think no, for me, like managing my time generally is fine. Having like a full-time job and trying to write the book was not that fine, but it just required a lot of sacrifice. And I think that's the thing when you have like deadlines and you have kind of, I had to forego a lot of like social events. Like I did not see any friends for 6 months. I had to cancel all my plans every weekend, and I had to squeeze in, you know, I have to fit in my sort of writing around my job. So for me, managing time in that sense was very much a process of sacrifice. And I knew it was going to end fairly soon. Like I knew that there was like an end in sight, and so it wasn't. And it, you know, obviously it was an incredible opportunity and an incredible kind of, you know, I don't want to diminish kind of the amazingness of the opportunity.
It's hard work though. Work comes after the incredible announcement.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, that was how I did it, by sacrifice. But I think managing time in general, for me, what I've always found really helpful is just kind of making sure that I have pockets. And this doesn't necessarily apply to being creative, because the hardest thing about writing fiction and only having pockets of time within which to do it is that sometimes your creative juices aren't flowing at between 10 and midnight, which is when you were allotted your weekday time to write. And so those days it was just very hard. My book involved a lot of research because half of the story is historical. And so in the days when I just felt like I couldn't write anything, it just wasn't coming out, I'd just read. And I would read articles, and I would, if I was lucky enough to get out of work early enough, I'd go to the British Library, and I would read as much as I could in the days where I didn't feel like the creative juices were flowing. But yeah, other than that, I do tend to sort of divvy up the day into, okay, make sure that I do this between this time and this time and this between this time, just to like make sure I get everything done.
Don't forget to eat though, yeah?
Yeah, eating is like 12 to 1.
Okay, make sure. Damola, do you think that there is more pressure on younger people today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, there is.
Because you've worked at in these creative places, you've worked at these social media places, you know how it works.
I mean, I'm new, I'm fresh to it now. Yeah, I think young people have a lot of pressure put on them, mainly because, you know, I'm speaking from my own experience. My parents would have gone, this is what I want for you, this is how we want you to kind of navigate the world. And I guess as a society, we are placing that on young people in general. We're like, based on everything we know, this is how we think you should live. And every generation has pressure from the world and the generations that have come before them. Social media will certainly add more of that. But I think young people also have, I guess, more tools to manage that pressure than I had, our generation had, perhaps. And so hopefully they're able to navigate the world. But yeah, there's no doubt young people face a lot of pressure today.
We got some questions from the audience that I want to read to you guys. We're going to start with you, Damola, if that's okay.
Yeah, cool.
Someone called @Rufio, their name's Piers. They wanted to know if you had any advice for somebody who wants to get out of advertising.
Yeah, I've definitely got advice for him or
Locate
her.
the exit and run.
I got out of advertising and got sucked back in. So getting out for me was about trying to be in the places where I wanted to go while still working in advertising. So, you know, dabbling here or there, figure out whether you like it, develop the skills that you need in order to exist in that world and get paid for being in that world. And if you get good enough at it, then go. But I think you have to kind of experiment before you run for the exit.
One for you, Hafsa. Did you ever doubt your work? Which we know that you definitely did, but how did you overcome it?
I think I will overcome it when the book's published if it's got good reviews. I think probably no matter what you do, because even with the small articles I've had published so far, which I've had, you know, nice feedback on, and you know, people have said, oh, I really enjoyed reading that, but I don't think you ever really get away from the idea that, like, is this really good? Like, I don't quite trust that this is actually really, I don't know if you've ever felt that way, Derek.
I feel it all the time.
Yeah, you don't quite think, oh, you know, you
Yeah.
won the Desmond Elliott Prize.
But you know, after I won it, I thought to myself, they probably just feel sorry for me, so they gave me the award.
But the way you guys talk is like, you know what imposter syndrome is, right?
Yeah, I think maybe we're feeling that.
Yeah, oh, maybe. Like, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, that's the whole point of this panel. It's the whole point of Murky Books existing. It's to show you that A, you're celebrated, and B, you deserve to be here. Like, it's actually quite, not heartbreaking, but it's like, it's so strange to sit here interviewing 3 people that I admire, and you're like, you don't believe it's real. Like, pinch yourself. It's not, you're not gonna wake up. Like, it's.
Do you know, it's interesting though, because no matter how many compliments someone gives to you, no matter how many good reviews you read, it never soaks into you until you read a bad review. Then that
straight away.
Into you straight away. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a reflection of like the structure and the society that we've grown up in. That's why we are the way that we are, sadly. So the answer is to get as many people as possible doing the kind of things that we do, to show you that this is normal, and this is good, and you can be good, and you're not like some one-off unique experiment that's somehow gone well because you don't trust that, but to show that, you know, anyone can do it.
That's part of the reason that I love Murky Books as well, because it's not about giving you the crumb of you know, publishing. When you were saying earlier about growing up and only reading Mallory Blackman, apart from like Zadie Smith, I think that's pretty much in terms of commercially viable. Another viewer question for you, Derek, is writing can be such a personal and intimate process. How do you find the courage to share your work?
I think, you know, it's interesting because you were like, you know, when you write a book, it's like your baby. I'm very much of the belief that once it's done and you put it out there, it's not yours anymore. People.
So like a sea turtle?
What's the sea turtle?
Oh, I've ruined it. In Finding Nemo, yeah, they go away.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And you're like, come back when you're ready.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So once
Not to trivialize it, I'm just...
No, of course, no, I completely understand. You know, once I've written it and I put it out there, and I think that's one way to deal with, I guess, reviews and stuff. Reviews in the press, if you're lucky enough to get them, is you just have to see it as, well, this is theirs now, on to the next one. Let me start working.
Move from the personal space to the public space.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And I wanted to say to you, like, try your best not to focus on reviews, because not everyone's gonna like your book. It's just facts. It's just gonna happen. And people on Goodreads can be very mean as well. So it's important to stay away from things like that.
I don't actually trust Goodreads for authentic reviews, because I think that people go on there when they're bored to be nasty.
Trolls.
Oh.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, it's true.
Damola,
Hey.
do you ever feel underqualified as a writer, and how do you get over it? This is by Onyinyi.
Absolutely. I mean, Niran and I, this is our first book, so I was actually underqualified as a writer. How have I got past that? By just doing it. We were given the opportunities, so we had to take it and make the most of it. And the next one will be better, and the one after that, if we get an opportunity to do that, will also be better. So I think getting over that sense of I'm not qualified, you do that by actually doing and trying to improve every time. But I think that imposter syndrome, there's always going to be a little bit of that just lingering in many of us, I think.
Derek, what is your advice to 16-year-olds? This is very specific. What's your advice to 16-year-olds who have a lot to say but think that they are hopeless at writing? And this is by @AspireAP_students.
If you think you're a terrible writer, just write anyway. Just carry on writing. Again, with creativity, I do believe that you do get better at writing. Of course you do. Everybody does. If you keep doing it, just keep writing, keep writing. If you've got a lot to say, just write it down. Write it down as much as you can. And as we've just been saying, you know, no matter what level you get to, you're going to think that you're not an amazing writer. You're not a great writer. Like someone like Salman Rushdie, I saw an interview with him and he was talking about books that he'd written previously, and he says he never goes back and reads them because he just doesn't, you know, he doesn't have that confidence in them. I don't believe there's any writer alive that would look, well, maybe Martin Amis, but apart from him, I don't think there's any writer alive that would look back on their work and say, yeah, this is bloody brilliant. Do you know what I mean? So just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing.
Because otherwise you'd be writing self-help books, wouldn't you? As opposed to giving a piece of yourself away, you'd be writing advice.
Yeah,
and
advice,
this is what
yeah.
you do and this is what...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As if it was a thing that you were super kind of confident in. I understand that though, because I think anybody in any profession, if you ask an athlete at the top of their game, if you ask an actor, if you ask even a politician, if they go back to their first debate, if they go back to their first race, there's nothing but criticism there.
Exactly, and also I think with writing as well, it's so subjective, like unbelievably so, that a book that I can think is the most beautifully, perfectly written novel, like The Great Gatsby, I read reviews of that and people are like, this is the worst written book I've ever read. Do you know what I mean? So it's so subjective. So again, whatever you think about your writing, try and put it to the back of your mind and just write as much as you can.
We have a question here from @BiancaOphelia, and I want to direct it to you, Hafsa. What is the best way to start writing a book based on yourself?
My novel's definitely not about me, but it does incorporate lots of my experiences. I think probably the answer to the question is to record your experiences so that you don't forget them. When something happens to you and it makes you feel a certain way, be it positive or negative, go home. If you want to be a writer, take a pen, write it down. you will have this little treasure trove of all of these things that happen to you. And exactly like Derek was saying earlier, if you don't record them, then you might misremember them anyway. But while you're in that moment and you're in that feeling and you're still holding on to that feeling, it's a good idea to get it down on paper. And then after a year or 2 years or however long you want to take, you can reread them all and relive them all and put the book together.
Do you have anything to add to that one, Derek?
No, I think that's
Told
pretty,
you it was a good question
that's
for you.
that's pretty much it. Because although I started writing, I know when I started writing it, where I was when I started writing it. I don't know the actual process that began. I was quite drugged up, so I can't really remember too tough. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer that question at all, really, to be honest.
Damola, how would you recommend writing a synopsis without giving away all of your secrets, which I think is something quite important for aspiring writers out there, because you do want to catch interest, you do want to hook potential publishers or collaborators without giving away the essence of what you're doing?
That is a really good question. I remember writing a treatment for a TV show, and I had the same question for myself when writing it, and going, how do I write a synopsis that grabs people's attention? I think one of the key things is having a point of view that shines through that synopsis, that kind of punches you when you read it, because having a point of view, I think, in writing is super important. So not just having a point of view, but trying to capture, I would imagine, the key elements, whether they are moments in the story or the kind of headlines that you want people to take away. So have a great point of view and think about the headlines, and find a way of massaging and crafting that into a synopsis, because at the end of the day, you want people to remember it and think about it when they're doing their washing and going, shit, that story, I can't stop thinking about it.
Had that with your book.
And Derek, how do you get past people judging your story?
Judging your story. Is this before you've published it or after? It doesn't specify.
I'm going to say both.
I think before, I think it's very important to make sure that if you're going to send somebody your work to read it, you make sure you're sending it to the right person. Because a lot of the times you'll send your work to somebody who, they may be your friends, but a lot of the time they have no idea what they're talking about. They'll tell you to change this, change that, change this. You ask them why, they can't explain themselves. That's not the kind of advice that you want to get from somebody. So yeah, just be careful. Sometimes maybe even don't send it to anybody. Just write it yourself, leave it for 2 months, come back to it with fresh eyes, and you can critique it yourself, because a lot of the time you won't even remember writing what you wrote, and you'll be able to know what's bad and what's good. When it comes to after...
You touched on this when you were speaking to Hafsa.
Yeah. Try your best. I mean, obviously I'm a hypocrite because I always check my reviews, but try your best not to look at the reviews, because again, some people are just mean for the sake of it. I find that a lot of critics, even in the conversation that's been happening in the past week, a lot of critics are mean for the sake of being mean.
Well, it's reactionary, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was Roland Barthes said that most book critics are failed novelists, and that's why they review books as mean as they do sometimes, because they wish they were in that novelist position. And I think there's some truth to that.
We've got one final viewer question, arguably the most important question of the day. It's from someone called @Logan13_King. What's the best thing on the Nando's menu?
Oh man, that's
Don't
making me
all
hungry.
clamour to answer
Well,
at once?
I'm straight up just, PERi-PERi chicken, half chicken. I don't go for the burgers. I just do the chicken, and I do it with my hands. So
I respect that.
that's what I do.
Sides at all? Or
I
do you
don't
get
get
wings
sides.
on the side or something?
No,
You do like a
no.
Carnivore
Just,
like that?
no, just the chicken. I'll get the one which has, the chips. So 2 sides, the 2 regular sides, or sometimes the 2 large, depends. But yeah, I'm straight up chicken, straight chicken.
Yeah.
Medium.
You're really thinking about this?
No, I used to be like, half chicken, spicy rice and chips.
And then
all
you
the time.
discovered the thighs.
But then I had one of their burgers, and I think it had like pineapple or something in it.
It did have it
And
in
I
it,
was
yeah.
like, fucking hell, I haven't been eating this whole time. So now we just ordered that one.
Is it a medium thing or is it?
Yeah, medium. I can't eat hot anymore.
No, me neither.
I
It's
don't
alright,
know.
because when you get older, it's,
Yeah, your stomach. Yeah, you can't do it no more. That is crazy.
No, you just got to practice. Just keep on doing it.
you've said that to answer to every question here.
Because it's the truth. Just keep on going.
What's your go-to order?
No, you know what? So I'm a half chicken, coleslaw.
You guys need to
and-
elevate, you know.
I can't.
No, but no. Wait, that is my standard order. Half chicken, coleslaw, maybe the peas, but the burger, but the one with the cranberry.
Oh, that's good as well.
Yeah,
That's good as well.
I
Yeah,
had
yeah.
that, and that was transformative. That
Yeah.
experience. That
conversation's
was
making me
lovely.
hungry.
Me too. I
Yeah.
was like, can we get a Nando?
Fire up the grill.
Yeah, that was. Oh man, I'm
Yeah?
really hungry now.
So you guys haven't lived, okay? Because all right, let me put this down. The best order is chicken thighs, peri-tamer, right? Don't look at me like that.
Oh man,
The broccoli, and then you can get chips or rice or whatever. It doesn't matter. But the long stem broccoli.
what about
You,
chicken on the
you,
bone?
you build that
though?
up like it's so experimental.
the
No,
It's
no.
literally
Tuesday.
Are the thighs boneless?
Yeah, they come. And that's the thing. You've got to have
no.
the
Well,
chicken on the
they're
bone.
You need to be doing this.
Yeah.
No, just like a little dumpling, but it's a meat dumpling.
Oh, that's no, you can't do that.
Do you know what? I thought this is going so well. No, but before you guys go anywhere, Derek, can you just tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes, so my book is called That Reminds Me. So it is a novel in verse. It is about a young boy's journey from childhood in foster care back into London through his adolescence, and then as he grows older as a man. So the main themes are, family, brotherhood, love, mental health, sexuality. And what I really tried to do was take certain elements from my own life and then fictionalize them, blow them up onto the page. And it's told in a series of fragments of memories, just because I believe that the way to get to know somebody, to get to know a character, is through their memories. When you're talking to someone, you're getting to know them, they reel off things that's happened to them from their life. Their personality comes out through what's happened to them. If you lose your memory, then who are you? So I just felt like that was the best way for me to introduce this character and allow the readers to build up some empathy for him and what he's going through.
And it's a really good read
Thank
as
you.
well. I've read it and I really implore and encourage everybody to get themselves a copy and to give it a go and to learn a little bit about themselves as well as learning about you.
Thank you.
Hafsa, thank you for joining us as well. Of course, your book isn't out yet. What are you allowed to tell us about your novel?
I can tell you about the novel. So it's called We Are All Birds of Uganda, and it's a story about twice migration. So the migration of South Asians into East Africa once from India, and then again into England and various other parts of the world when Idi Amin chucked them out in '72. So the story is a dual narrative. So half the story is based in sort of like modern day Britain, and it follows the story of a South Asian immigrant, like second generation like person who's basically living in London and trying to work out who he is a bit more. The other half of the novel is set historically, and it charts the history of a South Asian migrant living in Uganda. It starts from about just after the Second World War and goes all the way through to the expulsion and onwards. And yeah, it's multi-generational. It's really about like racial divides, generational divides, the idea of success and what it means to be successful. Lots of themes like loss, love, identity, belonging, like the meaning of home.
I can't wait to read it. I'm a huge bookworm as well, so this is right up my alley and my street. And Damola, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us today. And your book's a little bit different because it is non-fiction, isn't it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the book I wrote with my co-author Niran Vinod is called How to Build It, and it's a book about how to build a brand. So taking your side hustle and turning that into the hustle. It's very practical. So if you are a budding entrepreneur or you're building your own brand, then it will take you through kind of getting your mind right at the beginning and laying the foundations in the middle and then sharing it with the world. But it also has a bit about how you reflect on that journey too. It's only 170 odd pages long, so it's pretty small, so you can get through it in a day if you really wanted to. And it's really there to give people the information that myself and Niran had access to in marketing department meeting rooms that not many people will have the opportunity to. So we just want to give people that knowledge and decode the jargon that you hear in business books.
Well, to the three of you, I say congratulations. I say thank you for joining me today as well. And also, you deserve to be here, so like, you know. But yeah, thank you.